The classy Thursday St. Mark Spark is upon us. This is actually going to be the last classy Thursday St. Mark Spark for a while, with church coming back to in person worship on May 16th. We are going to be going in May to having one Spark a week. Generally, this will be on Wednesdays, but there might be the occasional Thursday Spark that pops up here and there. So the original purpose of the Spark was to have a time once a week or twice a week to connect and have something to think about, to chew on in between worship services. And so it switched a little bit with the pandemic to going every day, Monday through Friday, and then switching again to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But we will be making that switch next week to just a Wednesday Spark. So I've been thankful for all of you who have participated in this, for all of you who have been with us over the pandemic. In our reading from this Reach Out, and we can have special conversations online about those things as well. But our reading from the day is from Luke chapter 6, verses 39 through 49. This continues. Earlier, we talked about this on Tuesday about Jesus' Sermon on the Plain and how it matched up with the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew chapter 5. But Jesus is preaching. And so let's just listen to what he has to say and then share a few thoughts therein. Jesus also told them a parable. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into the pit? Yourself do not. The disciple is not a teacher, but everyone who is fully qualified will be like the log in your own eye. You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit. Figs are not gathered from thorns, nor are grapes picked from a bramble bush. The good person out for the good person out of the good treasure of the heart produces good, and the evil person out of the evil treasure produces evil. For it is out of the building a house who dug deeply and laid the foundation on rock. When a flood arose, the river burst against that house but could not shake it, because it had been well built. But the one who hears and does not act is like a man who has built a house on the ground without a foundation. When the river burst against it, immediately it fell, and great was the ruin of that house. May this God's word speak to our hearts, our minds, our spirits. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You'll hear some parallels in the Sermon on the Plain with the Sermon on the Mount. You'll hear some of these mini sermonettes that Jesus gives. The first one is dealing with the question of being able to properly. That's something I was told, I think, in high school. Every time you point a finger at somebody else, you're throwing three more fingers back at yourself. And I guess the thumb is going up. It's pointing to God because God sees all. But whenever we point out something someone else is doing, we need to focus first on ourselves. In fact, we need to make sure our own house is in order. One of the challenges with this, of course, and one of the natural things that folks will do is in pointing out someone else's faults that are just different faults than we have far less tolerance for people who sin differently than us. We expect grace for ourselves, but not so much for the others. A quick note on removing the plank from our own eye, the bigger sin from our own eye is also so that we can help our neighbor get the speck out of their own eye. the reason that we want to make sure our house is in order and that we're living the right way is so that when we go to someone, we win the right to be heard. We win the right by our actions, by the way we live our lives, to interact and try to correct one another. But that requires ourselves being open to receive correction. The first third of this is talking about specks and planks and eyes. This is good fruit. If it's a bad choice, and about how when you have a speck or you have a plank in your eye, you're blind, everyone's going to end up in the ditch. And the next part, the second third of this, is about fruit. That's very real is that if you are doing good things, it is out of the abundance of a good tree or a good life, a good heart. If you are producing bad fruit, evil fruit, fruit that causes bitterness to someone else, that comes out of our hearts as well. So it is by your fruit you're known. An apple tree produces apples. A fig tree isn't gathered from thorns or grapes from a bramble bush. It's by your tree. Fruit will match that up. Or your fruits, if they aren't good, maybe you need to check. You need to check really what kind of tree God is calling you to be, and are you living up to that right now? We're talking a lot more about fruit, specifically grapes and vines, about Jesus being the true vine on Sunday. So I invite you to be part of that conversation. The last part of this is talking about, and I can almost hear Jesus say this: "Why do you call me to do?" He said, "Lord, Lord, and do not do what I tell you." Jesus is talking to the first century disciples here, people who gathered around. One house is built on the solid rock foundation. The other house is built on with no foundation. I think Matthew talks about the other house building being built on sand. Well, the house that's built on nothing or on sand, when the floods come here, the river bursts against it. Matthew talks more about the storms, but when those come up, the house comes down, and that's the person who hears Jesus as Lord and just doesn't do it. Well, the house that's built on the solid rock is the house of the people who say, Lord, Lord, yes, Lord, and do what Jesus commands and acts on them. And these are actions of generosity, of kindness, of forgiveness, of not returning an evil word for an evil word, or a strike for a strike, or to hit somebody back. Those are the people who are living out their faith. And so those are the folks who build their house on solid rock. And then again, when that comes, when the flood comes, the river bursts against the house, that house is not shaken because it's well built. The truth of the matter in both of these foundations is that there is going to be a flood. There is going to be a storm. There is going to be violent winds. There is going to be trouble. We are guaranteed. It's going to happen. It happens to both of these houses, both those who hear the word and do it, and those who hear the word and don't do it. The only difference is the house that is authentic in what it proclaims and also authentic in how it lives out its faith. That house stands up. That house weathers that storm. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It simply means that we are building our home on the foundation at last. I can make jokes about Monty Python here and about trying to build a castle in the swamp. I'm not going to do that. I commented on the Cardinals are playing right now. When I watch those games, I get to hear about healing working on your foundation. The question is, how do you check your foundation? How do you check where not just where you build your house, but where you build your life? Are you building it on the whims of saying yes and trying to look the part? Or are you building it on trying to live out the part and what that looks like? And it's not a holier than thou aspect of trying to pick out the speck out of everybody else's eye. It's far more, we're told we have to remove the plank first. It's not just about trying to present ourselves as holy, us having to sit, other people will see it. It's about that foundation of love and kindness and joy and patience and self-control. All these fruits of the Spirit are listed off in Galatians chapter 5, Paul lists stuff. So may you check your foundation to see where your house is built upon, and to see where your faith is built upon. And in doing so, may you trust in the rock, the Petra that saves us, the Petra that supports us, the Petra that provides for us, but also that rock which is the eternal love of God in Jesus Christ. I pray God's blessing upon you. And since this is kind of wrapping up a Thursday, classy Thursday spark, we're gonna just undo the bow tie, take a little bit more casual from here on out. But if there's anything you need, anything that we can walk alongside you, please let us know, and we'll be happy to do so. May God be with you all.